Because if you know what that motivation is, you can continue to call these folks back and poke at that motivation of, hey, I know you said you needed to move in June and it's April now. So we're getting pretty close to crunch time.
Hey guys, it's George Uno with REIClub, and back with another edition of First and Worst. My guest today is Noah Gilliom, and Noah, did I pronounce that right?
Yes, you did. You nailed it.
Okay, well, Noah works over in the Midwest with a couple other entrepreneurs in real estate. So Noah, tell us about your life before real estate. What were you doing before you got into the game?
Yeah. So my life before real estate, went to school for social services, was in law enforcement for a little bit, worked in the social service sector, worked with Department of Child Services, was a contractor, did stuff for that, social work, and then worked with people with disabilities for a little bit. It was great. It was fulfilling to an extent, but the financial piece wasn't there for me. So I was looking for something else, and then that's when real estate kind of fell onto my plate.
So how did real estate fall on your plate? Tell us about that. How'd you meet Ryan?
Yeah, so Ryan and he and his wife had moved to Indy, and we actually went to the same church. We played on the worship band. He's a guitarist, I'm a drummer. So we were friends through that, and then he had actually thrown out a Facebook post, was like, hey, looking for someone who's good at talking to people to hop on my team. And so I messaged him. I was like, hey, what is this about? Let's grab coffee. Let's talk about it. And he's like, okay, so you're going to be doing acquisitions. You're going to be meeting with sellers, figuring out their problems, and then offering them cash for their house as a solution. And I was like, okay, great. That sounds good. And he's like, there's one caveat. I'm not sure how I'm going to pay you, and I don't know if I can afford it. And I was like, well, we'll get it figured out. I think I want to take this leap of faith, and 6 years later, here we are. It worked out. There were some skinny months, but we made it work.
Man, that's quite a risk you took on Ryan, because at that point he wasn't he wasn't at the level he's at now, right? He was kind of just starting.
Right. Yeah, he had been in it for about a year, maybe 2 years, before I hopped in. None of the businesses were at anywhere close to the level they're at now. I think now they're all seven-figure businesses, and everything's churning and burning, and it's great. But yeah, back then, Ballpoint was just getting started. CallPorter was just getting started. We kind of created them for ourselves, actually, here in Indianapolis. But yeah, it was not the glory days like we're living right now. It was much more bootstrapping and figuring out how we're going to do this thing.
Oh man, well you took a risk and it paid off. I think that's something we can all learn from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Wouldn't change it.
Yeah, I mean that's kind of how the game works. So Noah, tell us about this. You jump on with Ryan. You've got no, he's not paying you a salary or anything. So you're kind of like you're all in on this. It's got to work for you. How did your first deal look like? How long did it take to get? And just walk us through that.
Yeah, so the first deal was it was an interesting one. So it took me about 7 weeks to get that first deal. So in that 7 weeks, I'm like, am I cut out for this? Should I do this? Am I going to be able to make money? Like, what's happening? I don't know anything about this. So some sellers that called in. We set an appointment. I went out, met with them at one of their rental properties, and then it turns out they had two. So they were like, hey, you know what? This seems to be a good fit. Let's actually go check out the other property. I was like, okay, cool. Like, I'll drive over there. I'll meet you, grab some pictures. Looked at the pictures, made them an offer, and I think there was about 1 to 2 weeks of follow-up back and forth. And finally, they're like, hey, you know what? We want to talk about this more. Come to our house, and we're going to sit down at the table. And I was like, okay, like what does sitting at the table mean? What are we doing? Like I'm kind of confused. And they're like, well, yeah, we just want to talk about it, make sure everything's a good fit. So Ryan's like, hey, well, just take these two purchase agreements. And I was like, what's a purchase agreement? At that point in time, I didn't even know what I was doing. I got these two 8-page contracts. I had no idea how to read them, no idea what I was doing. And I went and met with these elderly folks, sat down at their table, and was like, hey, let's read through this together and get you to sign it so we can buy your house. And they had all these questions, and I had no answers because I had never seen a purchase agreement. I was like, I don't know what any of this means, but somehow, by the grace of God, I was able to get these people to sign these purchase agreements. And then we were able to wholesale both of them for about 13K a piece. So I mean, it definitely worked out. It was great. But yeah, I went into my first deal 7 weeks in, still knowing nothing, and somehow pulled it off.
So 7 weeks of just hearing no's on the phone, huh?
Oh yeah, just grinding for 7 weeks and being like, I don't know if I'm cut out for this.
Yeah, that had to be tough. I'm sure a lot of us out there who are getting into this, oh, I'm gonna try wholesaling. Let's do it, and it's like you're definitely gonna, I think you said earn your stripes, which is
Absolutely, absolutely.
no. One thing I took away from your story there was you said I went and did this deal, and then tell us about what you thought after that. What was your? You said, okay, if I could do that without knowing anything, then what?
Yeah, yeah. So it was for me. It was a very eye-opening experience of like, okay, if I can go in being 100% underqualified, not know what I'm talking about, and not know what I'm doing, and getting these people to agree, I was like, you know what? I think there's something here. If I actually learn this industry, learn about it, do more deals, and figure it out, I think I could be pretty successful with it. And so at that point, it was either, hey, I got my 2 deals and I'm out, or just jump in head first already further than I had before, and really figure it out. And that's the route I took of, you know what, I'm going to learn this. I'm going to jump in because, the more qualified and more information that I know, I think I can be really successful with this.
Yeah, so that was what I really took away was you said that. I was like, you went out and you did it, and then you're like, okay, now I should learn it.
Yeah, yeah.
I think a lot of people think you have to do it the other way around, but that's not the case.
Right. Yeah. I think there's a lot of people in this industry that I talk to and consult for and do stuff with that analysis paralysis is like, it runs rampant in this industry. And obviously I get it. I mean, you're dealing with people, some of their largest assets they're ever going to own, you're transacting it and all of that. So you definitely should know what you're doing. But at a certain point, I think now with as saturated as YouTube is and Instagram and all of that, you're having people tell you a million different things. A lot of people get bogged down in, do I know enough? Whereas like, if I can get through it and not know a single thing about it, you can get through it knowing like an okay amount about it. Like there's a lot of actionable steps and a lot of things you can learn and read, but it is very, very doable, even if you think you don't have enough education on it.
It also sounds like Ryan's onboarding process wasn't the best. Wasn't the most helpful at first, huh?
It was not. I don't think we even had an onboarding process. It was, hey, here's the CRM that we use. You're going to call people and meet with them. And I'm like, okay, cool, let's go. That was the onboarding session.
Oh man, that's a ton of fun. I'm sure things are dialed in now. I mean, you guys are running, like you said, multiple 7-figure businesses, so all those details, got worked out in the end.
Yeah, absolutely, they have.
All right, so you're cranking along. That was 2016. You got started, cranking along a few years. What does your worst deal look like?
Yeah, so our worst deal actually happened a couple of years ago. It was a post-COVID deal. We had never bought a manufactured home, mobile home, and it just turned out to be the absolute worst nightmare we've ever dealt with. So we bought this house. It's in a prime location, prime area of a suburb of Indy. It was a mobile home on 1 acre, just like a giant square. Looked great. There's an exact comp down the street that sold for 240, and we're like, hey, if that house sold for 240, it's a mobile home, also on an acre. Ours should sell for 240 or 250 because ours was actually a little bit bigger. Well, we thought that was the case. So we bought this thing for about 160, 165. We thought we were going to be into it for like 180, 185. I think we were into it for closer to like 200, 205. We blew our rehab budget, all kinds of issues. And then, so we're all in right around that 200 mark, and we're like, okay, if we sell it at 250 after realtor commissions, we'll still be all right. We'll still make like 30 grand, right? Should be okay. No, wasn't okay. So we get into it. The further we delve down the rabbit hole, mobile homes, manufactured homes are a lot different than residential, as we learned. We didn't inspect it properly. We didn't appraise it properly. There's a lot of things that go into the foundation. You have to get HUD tags. You have to make sure it's tied down properly. All of that is very important and also costs a lot of money if it's not done right, which we learned. So I think we spent about another 15, 20K on foundation stuff, getting the HUD tags. That led to more issues. We had to do more rehab work because when we did some of the fixes, some stuff in the inside of the house didn't work out right. A lot of issues there. And then I think by the time we sold it, we had it for like 6.5, 7 months. So holding costs weren't great either. And then we blew our rehab budget. Then we added about 20K more in foundation work, all of that stuff. So we netted a like 14K loss by the time this thing was all said and done. So yeah, that was one of the worst deals we've ever done.
Oh, and at some point, you said that they were proposing to pick it up with a crane to get under it.
Yes. Yeah, because so the crawl space, it did this as the house went further because they didn't dig out one of the crawl spaces. So where we had to do 4 tie-ins, there was like 9 inches of clearance, something like that. So a few of the contractors we had out there to do the foundation work, they're like, hey, the best thing we can do is strap the house up, lift it off the foundation, strap it down, and then set it back down. And I was like, oh man, we're in for it. Finally, we found somebody who could get in there, do the work, and take care of it. But still, it was not good, not good at all.
So what's the lesson we could take away that you guys took away from that?
Yeah, so I would say there's two lessons on that. One, we're never going to do manufactured mobile home again. And two, making sure you have the proper teams in place. So we have really good inspectors, really good appraisers, stuff like that. But everybody's geared toward the brick and mortar residential side of things. Nobody's versed in manufactured homes, mobile homes, stuff like that. So we didn't even know what to look for. So that's one of the big lessons is make sure your team knows what to look for when you get into a new type of asset.
That's a good piece of advice because I think, we're like, oh, it's just a mobile home, same thing, right? Nope.
Right, exactly. That's what we went into it, and here we are.
Oh, that's at least a fairly cheap lesson. I've heard, much worse stories here on the podcast.
Oh yeah, I believe it. I believe it.
All right, so Noah, tell us about what you guys are up to now. I mean, you said you've got the 3 companies, so you've got the Christopher Ellen Homes, you've got Ballpoint Marketing, and you've got CallPorter. So kind of give us a cap on like what does each of those arms of your company do, and what are you guys working on that's super exciting for you?
Yeah. So we've got Christopher Ellen Homes, which is the residential real estate side here in Indianapolis. I had that up. I do. I look at all of our deals, look at all of our flips, stuff like that. And then we have Ballpoint, which is a direct mail company for real estate investors. So when you say you pull a list from Deal Machine, PropStream, anything like that, you send Ballpoint the list, and Ballpoint prints all the mail pieces. So they're the handwritten pieces, handwritten envelopes, all of that, and they send those to prospective sellers. And then from there, we also have CallPorter, which you put a phone number in the mail piece, and then the phone number rings to CallPorter. So they're like call it a front desk. Call it a front desk concierge type service. So they answer the phones, they get all the details, and then they book the appointments for you. So those are kind of the things that they do. So they're just continuing to get bigger, hiring more reps, doing more mail, stuff like that. And then on the real estate front, we used to just be a solo market in Indianapolis. Now we do stuff in Fort Myers. We have a flip going on down there. We have some flips going on in Louisville, so we're expanding there. We're looking at some development deals down in the Naples area of doing like luxury new build type stuff. And then we're also working on commercial real estate assets here in Indianapolis. So looking at medical facilities, warehousing, industrial, self-storage, stuff like that. We're not trying to buy like a storefront or something like that, just because with the way commerce is, I don't know if I want to get stuck with a strip mall that just kind of dies. So we're looking at more recession-proof type commercial assets at this point. That's kind of our next big endeavor, you could say.
Well, you guys are really branching out and doing a lot of different things, huh?
Yeah, we're doing our best, and we've got a great team behind us, which is why we can expand and do the things we do.
Yeah, you mentioned expanding into those markets, and you guys are only going into those markets because you have, people that you trust and you got good boots on the ground. Is that right?
Correct. Yeah, we've got boots on the ground in those markets and teams who know what they're doing. Sure, we provide a lot of oversight and stuff like that, but the people in those markets are real estate savvy. They know what they're doing. They have their own networks within those markets that we can tap into. So it was a really good fit for us to come in, provide super high level expertise, and then just share the profits with them as we continue to grow and move on.
That's awesome, man. That's a good, solid partnerships you're building there.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Noah, Ballpoint marketing, it's all about, direct mail. And then you've got CallPorter, which is all about handling the inbound flow of leads that comes from your direct mail. What do you find is really important in the follow-up game? Because I know that you guys are like super strong on that, and you mentioned that a lot, that your first deal came through weeks of follow-up. So give us some advice on like how much follow-up should we be doing, how do we stay engaged, and how do we do it right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say 80 to 85% of our deals come from solid follow-up. So that's a mixture of texting, calling, SMS messages that are on a drip campaign that we have like custom written out. So we toggle all those on. And the big thing is setting yourself up to make sure you have a follow-up. So not when you negotiate with someone, you can't give them your highest offer right away. Otherwise, you have nothing to call them back on. And then another big thing is really digging into that seller motivation, because if you know what that motivation is, you can continue to call these folks back and poke at that motivation of, hey, I know you said you needed to move in June and it's April now. So we're getting pretty close to crunch time. So figuring out those pain points so you can follow up, and then staying very, very, very consistent with that follow-up. So let's say we give an offer, we follow up with those people 7 to 10 times in a 2-week period after we've given that offer. So it's important to stay in front of them and be on their mind at all points in time, because, hey, this guy's offering me $100,000. I could be moved by June like I want to. In the follow-up, you're explaining how you're going to solve their problems if they go with you with that offer. So leading them to the water essentially to drink, and you're providing that solution, is why we follow up so much. So in all of our follow-ups, we talk about that overarching solution that we're providing for them.
How long do you think like is a typical follow-up? Like, we start following for 3-4 days and people are kind of getting antsy. Oh, maybe this isn't a good lead. What's your experience been there?
Yeah, I would say it's easy to get burnt out when you hear no all the time. And if you've followed up 4, 5, 6 times with people and they keep saying no, at that point, give them a little space and then keep following up. Keep following up a few days later, maybe a week later. So I would say typical follow-up probably takes anywhere from 2 to 6 weeks probably. I would say most of our deals, sure, we have laydowns that sign right away, and then we have ones that sign a year plus later. But most of our deals probably fall into that 2 to 6 weeks of follow-up range is pretty consistent for us.
Yeah, and are you just kind of sending SMS blasts, or are your acquisitions people actually trying to form relationships? Do you think that's important?
Yeah, I would say so. We do some SMS stuff, but yeah, we're very rapport based and relational. And that's why we're able to dig into that motivation, figure out what's truly going on with these sellers. So our acquisitions guys, they really do form a relationship with these people, and that makes follow-up not as mundane because they know what's going on in their sellers' lives. They have a relationship with them. It's not just some Joe Blow calling them from this house company trying to pester them into saying yes. So yeah, it's very, very important to build those relationships, because if you don't build those relationships, you can't have that follow-up.
Totally true. And that's great advice. I mean, just being persistent. I mean, I think, a lot of people would want to give up after a week of follow-up, but you're saying 2 to 6 weeks, almost 2 months of follow-up. That's that patience and that, staying in front of them, staying on the top of their mind is super important, because, as you said, they're trying to solve a problem in their life, and, they may not be in a position where they can jump right away and be one of those quick, sign the same day offers. It might be something you have to work for. So really being consistent and persistent, like you said.
Yeah, absolutely. That's key.
Well, thanks so much, Noah. I really appreciate it. And guys, if you want to learn more about Ballpoint marketing or CallPorter to really help you guys in your real estate business with marketing and handling inbound leads, you can go to REIClub.com/Ballpoint, and I'll get you guys some links over to them, and you can check them out. What they do is amazing. I mean, Noah, you said when you started, you guys were getting Ballpoint off the ground and you had just 6 machines. How many of those handwriting machines do you guys have now?
Now I think they're up to about 100. We were in a 900 square foot house here in Indianapolis, and now they've got a 12,000 square foot warehouse. So it's really taken off over the last few years.
could say that's a little bit of growth, I guess.
Just a little bit. Oh yeah.
That's super cool. But what you guys do is super unique there, so it's really no surprise to me that it has blown up like that. So, guys, this is George Uno with Noam Gilliom. Thanks so much, Noah, for coming on. Thanks for your time, and thanks for tuning in, everybody. I'll catch you guys on the next episode of First and Worst.